Why is flower photography so difficult when it's so easy to find beautiful subjects? And it becomes even more challenging when you photograph wildflowers in the forest. In this video, you will get some essential tips on how you can capture amazing wildflower photos. Make sure you stay to the end, as I'll share a bonus tip that can save a lot of your shots from ending up in the trash can. Spring is finally getting a foothold here in Denmark. It has been awful weather for a long time, but now it's kind of becoming stable and I simply love this season. So let's go out and get some beautiful photos of flowers today. And there's a little bit of wind today and it can be a problem, but let's see if we can overcome it. So let's go. I find that if you get down really low to the ground, then it's much easier to find the subject you want to capture. You want it to be separated a bit from the rest, so it will pop out a bit, and you can see that if you're looking like from the top down. At least that's the way I prefer to find my subjects. When you take photos of flowers, you want them to stand out and be the main character of your photos. However, this doesn't mean placing the flowers in the center of the frame. While this sometimes works for top-down shots, in many other situations, you'll find that placing the flowers a little off-center is more pleasing to the eye. For example, you may place flowers using the rule of third and let the petals act as leading lines that draws the eyes toward the stamen of the flower. I kind of like how the foreground here is a little bit, the frame is dirtied a bit by the grass just in front of it. I think that works quite well. Flowers are static subjects that allows you to take your time and find the best shooting angle. This could be photographing flowers from below or placing the camera at the flower's level to show its view of the world. In this way, you also get a much better view of the shape of the flower. By the way, live view is your best friend when photographing flowers. With live view enabled, you can better zoom in and set the focus manually to the exact spot that you want. So let's move on to where you should focus in flower photography. Aim your focus at the most intriguing parts, like the stamen, the pistil, or the delicate details in the petals. When capturing a shot of a flower from the side, you want to focus on the edge of the petal that is closest to you, or on the part of the flower that is most detailed. With the right depth of field, you can create a lovely blurred background that draws the viewers straight to the star of the show. By the way, if you enjoy this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more videos about nature photography, please subscribe to the channel as well. So how do you get the right depth of field when photographing flowers? To get the depth of field that you want, you'll need to adjust your aperture settings in most cases. A wider aperture, like a lower f-stop number, will provide a shallower depth of field, isolating the subject against the blurred background. On the other hand, a narrower aperture, which is a higher f-stop number, will give you a deeper depth of field and keeping more of the scene or more of the flower in focus. Also remember that the depth of field becomes narrower the closer you get to your subject, and wider the further away you get. So instead of changing the aperture from, let's say, f5 to f9, I often just pull back the camera a bit to increase the depth of field and still keep the background smooth and calm. Now, this is actually where I often spend the most time in flower photography, getting the depth of field right, just the way I want it. I absolutely hate it when I get home to find out that I didn't get the depth of field that I needed. If you're not at macro distance but want to make sure that you have got enough depth of field for the entire flower to be in focus, you can take a couple of safe shots at smaller aperture or do a 2 or 3 shot focus stack. And the way to do this is first you focus on the petal closest to you, and then you focus on the petal furthest away from you. You can also take a shot in the middle if you like. As long as the camera doesn't move and there isn't any wind, you can easily blend these 2 or 3 shots together in post-processing. When capturing flower photos, you must carefully choose the background. Now, in order to emphasize the flower, you may need a background in a contrasting color, or one with a different oriented texture, or maybe even a little desaturated background. So if you change the position and angle of the camera and try to work the scene in this way until you find the perfect background. Before pressing the shutter, take a moment to really think about what's the actual focal point of your flower photo. It may be a single flower, it may be several flowers, or just a tiny part of the flower. Then forget about the focal point and observe the rest of the elements that enters the frame. If the focal point is just one of many other elements, you'll likely have a background that is too busy, or you'll have like lots of shadows or branches that distracts the eye, and you need to simplify the composition. A negative space is like a term for empty space around the subject that increases the flower's visibility and how important it is in the image. So for example, by leaving space around a flower, you allow it to like breathe and dominate the scene. Now, you can create negative space in your composition by just changing the position and the angle of the camera until you have the right background. Also, I suggest experimenting with backlighting. It illuminates the flowers, the highlights, and its vibrant colors, and it can create like this beautiful glow around the edge and create a beautiful rim light. It can also make the delicate structures like petals appear almost translucent, adding another layer of depth and interest to your image. Remember that backlighting works best during the golden hours of the early morning or late afternoon or evening. This is when the sun is like at a lower angle and the light is softer and warmer. This is perfect for creating that magical glow effect. But do be careful, as backlighting can sometimes lead to overexposure or silhouettes, even though you didn't intend to. With the subject between you and the sun, place the camera so that the sun is not in the background. It should be a little bit outside the frame. And then just slightly tilt the camera until you can like catch some flares coming into the lens, or that you find that the glow of the flower is most visible. If you find a dark background, then the rim light will stand out a bit more. What should you do if you photograph flowers in harsh sunlight? First of all, try to avoid it, as it can really result in overexposed and unflattering image. If you must shoot, or if this is the only time you have for capturing wildflowers, consider using a diffuser to soften the light. As you can see now, the sun is very harsh, so let's look for a spot with both flowers and shade. So yeah, let's do that. So we got some nice shade here, and if I can find some interesting flowers, this could be great. Simply find flowers in the shade and make use of the soft light that the shadow provides. This is a really easy fix in most cases. So take care that the background you choose is also in shadow to avoid like too much contrast in the image. Now here's the bonus tip that I promised you. It can be a really good idea to exposure compensate -1 or just half a stop when photographing white flowers. Now, white flowers can often appear overexposed in photos, especially when using like evaluative metering. If you have darker elements in the scene, the camera will lift the exposure to make the overall exposure better. But in doing so, it can end up overexposing the white flower. So by just underexposing your shot by 1 stop or half a stop, you can retain the flower's detail and natural vibrancy. This method allows you to capture all the details and textures without the white being overexposed and blown out. Remember, you can't really save a shot where the whites are blown out. It's often impossible because there's no data in the white areas, and this is the flower is your main subject, and this makes the shot end up being really like unusable. Getting great wildlife flower photos is much easier if you got a sharp and reliable lens. I use the Nikon Z105mm macro lens most of the time, but there's one thing that's kind of annoying with it, and I think you should know about it if you intend to get this lens. So take a look at it in this video up here and I'll tell you all about it. See you over there.